Shabbat Shalom. As we prepare for a restful and inspiring Shabbat, we reflect on a very distressing week that was, with the shooting in Texas, with the murder of the 19 children, the 2 educators. It's horrific news, and it's difficult to embrace Shabbat coming from this week. And so the only thought I reflect to you and to us all was that which was expressed by Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, who's the rabbi of Tree of Life congregation in Pittsburgh. And he wrote that hearing of these shootings, of course, brings him back to that moment in his synagogue. And when he turns around, he said, "When I readied myself to ask God why, God returned my question, why?" And that's the question we all grapple with. It's a question that we ask of God, but that we have to be prepared to answer when God asks it of us. Why have we allowed this to happen? Why have we allowed a society to reach this point where this news is no longer surprising? As horrific as it is, it's become a regular occurrence in our news cycle, and why have we not done more to stop it? They're profound questions, and I turn now to the Torah portion of Bechukotai, which addresses in its very first words a fundamental question of what does it mean to walk with God? Im bechukotai telechu. If you walk in my statutes, as the verse says, then blessings will come. And the Torah goes on to enumerate blessings and curses that will happen if we do listen or don't listen to the word of God. There are many different ways of understanding that phrase, Im bechukotai telechu, if you walk in my statutes. In fact, the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, the great commentator, offers 42 different paths of interpretation of that one phrase. And one path of interpretation is that you have to parse it a little bit differently. Im bechukotai, if you are in my statutes, then telechu, then you will walk, then you will find success. If you observe my statutes, if you walk in my paths, then you will be able to walk, you'll be able to proceed, you'll be able to achieve in the ways that you would like. I reflect for a moment on a beautiful interview that was done with Ehud Banai, the great Israeli musician from a great Israeli musical family. And he was asked about his inspiration, whether some of his inspirations came from, or he had spoken about this, that they had come from the American genre, from the country music genre. And he wrote very powerfully, or he responded very powerfully. And he said, you know what? I used to be envious of those musicians who could write about driving for days. He wrote, sometimes in my songs, I'll write, the Israeli musician said, I'll write, I'm taking time again between Peki'in and Beit Jan. And you know the distance between Peki'in and Beit Jan? It's about a 6-minute drive. And he said, but these American country music singers and the blues singers, you know what they can do? They can write a song about the journey from New Orleans to Memphis, and then they can write another song about the journey from Memphis to New York, and they can drive and they can drive and they can explore and they can explore. And meanwhile, he said, my song, you know what it talks about? About the journey from Pardes Chana to Karkor, which is about a 5-minute walk or drive, very close, right next to each other, neighboring communities. That's what we write about, he said, in Israel, because we don't have that space, because we don't have the luxury to drive and drive and drive. And therefore, he said, I was jealous of my colleagues in the United States who could write about those journeys that they would take. Oh, what it would mean for me if I could get in my car, he said, in Israel, and just drive and cross borders and not worry about security and not worry about safety. What an experience, what an extraordinary experience that would be, Ehud Banai wrote. And he said, and then I was speaking to one of my friends, and my friend said to me, it's true. Here in Israel, you can't drive for days and days. But you know what you can do that you can't do elsewhere here in Israel? You can go back. You can go deep. You can travel for 2, 3, even 4,000 years. That's what we have here. We don't have distance in terms of kilometers or miles. What we have here, he said, is distance in terms of time, in terms of depth. Here, you can travel deeply. And that's a thought that I take with me as many of us are planning our summer vacations. Where are we going to go? What are we going to explore? It's often a time of traveling. And in thinking of that theme, We think of the freedom that travel allows us to do, to explore, to see new things, to feel free, a little bit unfettered by some of the restrictions that govern our daily lives while we're in our routines of life and work and home and living within the confines of our usual routines. And it allows us to breathe a little bit and stretch out a little bit, and it's wonderful. But there's another journey that we take, and that our summer, our upcoming summer, leads us into the month of Elul. And that's the month in which we prepare for Rosh Hashanah. That's the month in which we focus not on the journey that we take in terms of distance, but the journey that we can take in terms of our tradition, and in terms of going back and deep and understanding that the tradition that we have is one that allows us to dig and find more and discover more. And what an amazing blessing it is, a blessing that each and every one of us has, the ability to study the Torah, the ability to embrace these statutes. Im Bechukotai, if you walk in my statutes, our Parsha says, Telechu, then you can walk, then you can travel, not distance, but depth. And what a blessing that is. May it be a Shabbat of comfort and healing for all. May we know no further sorrow and no further violence, and may there be peace upon Israel and the entire world. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.